Do you want to hear the real truth about working from home? I've just landed my second working from home job. Now I've been working at home for over a year now, and I'd love to share some of my insights and what I've learned. Hi, I'm Sandra Park. I'm an engineer and a financial coach helping women in STEM engineer the lives they want. As I was saying, this is my second work from home job, and what have I learned from it? My first work from home job, that entire team was virtual. Nobody was there on site. We all got hired virtual. We don't know anybody. We all live in different time zones and regions of the country. Honestly, we never met. Even when I had been there over a year, they kept kind of dangling, we're gonna meet in person and do some work where we all meet and gather in the same place, and they never came through on that. Even when they were talking about it, I felt once we got to a certain point, especially when you had been working with people for over a year that you've never met. Also, just to give you some background, that team, we did not go on camera very often, very little to never. Most of the time, you're talking on these Teams calls, you hear people's voices, you start kind of assuming things about people based on the way they talk, their accent, how well spoken they are. Do they talk a lot in meetings? That team, they actually encourage people to talk a lot. Because the downside of being work from home and virtual is one of the only ways to make your presence known is to speak up a lot in meetings. Right? You can't make your presence shown by just showing up to the meetings and being in a room compared to being on site. I felt it was much harder to make real connections with people at work. The other problem is when we have very structured meetings where people are talking, there's not a lot of time for people to have that chit chat, that water cooler talk, which sometimes you think is very non-productive. But when you think about it, how do you actually bond or get to know any of your coworkers? It's in these more casual hallway moments. It's when you're grabbing coffee. It's when you're pulling your papers off the printer. I found that it was a lot harder to really get to know people because you would get criticized for being non-productive in these very big public meetings when you're trying to speak up, right? Then you're only a voice. The longer and longer they procrastinated on us actually meeting physically in person, the more I felt people were actually getting shyer and more withdrawn. Because I think a lot of people were scared if they actually met someone in person, they might actually like them a little more than they thought. They wanted to hold on to their preconceived notions of who this person was by staying remote, by staying behind that computer screen, by having your camera off in a Teams call. I did that job for a while. I'll have to admit, I think my health declined a little bit. Before I took that job, I was very regularly exercising. I actually had a personal trainer come to my house. And around that time I took that job, I was thinking, well, I'm gonna be at home all the time. She's taught me all these workouts. Why don't I just do it on my own? I don't need her to come to my house and guide me through workouts. But that was a bad decision because then I had no consistency at all in my workouts. The conundrum was when you can work out and do whatever you want, whenever you want, you kind of don't do it. So I found I worked out even less. I'm already a really bad snacker, right? So I kind of eat slowly and I like to take my time. And being at home kind of led to me eating more. A lot of mindless eating, snacking, going to my kitchen, seeing what's there to eat. The other thing that kind of suffered a little bit was my mental health. Because as a purported, I'll admit it, I'm an introvert. And when you're already working from home, you stay off camera all day, you're not always very presentable. When there are events outside of work and you're thinking, now I gotta put on my makeup and I gotta do my hair and put on an outfit. And it just feels too daunting when you've been at home all day. On your Teams calls, some days I just wore my pajamas or I was wearing something really, really casual. So I've learned that I need to build in interactions where I get outside of my house, where I can talk to people in person, where I can still socialize. Because one of the downsides of working from home is you lose a lot of your social interactions. I'm not saying all your work friends are your real friends, but you miss out on a lot of little interactions, chances where you can talk to people, where you have a little bit of social interaction throughout the day. You have to be very proactive now about creating that for yourself. How do you create that outside of your workplace? Now you're working from home. Now you need to get outside of your house and go to things. When I took this career break that I just took, and then I was looking for the job that I have now, I was actually open to being on site or being hybrid. I didn't make being remote a deal breaker anymore, because I guess I probably needed more social interaction and structure in my life than I thought I needed. I took this current job I have that is remote, and these are some of the things and boundaries I'm realizing and learning to protect myself so I don't get burnt out or frustrated with being remote. One thing I learned from my last remote job is it's easy to think, well, I have an hour for lunch. I can go cook. I can go to the grocery store. I'm going to, cook these elaborate meals. When you're working from home, I still have my meals prepared in advance, or I'm eating very simple things for lunch and breakfast. It's not very realistic to cook an entire meal and eat it and get back to work. I've realized that, like being an employee on site, you need to have your meals prepared. You need to have a plan for what you're going to eat for your meals. I'm also trying to not mindlessly snack. And in my last job, sometimes we had these very, very long meetings, called ceremonies, that we had to be on Teams calls for sometimes 2 hours. Some of them got up to 3 hours long. To make it a little more bearable, when you're sitting in some of those long meetings, it's nice to have a snack. It's nice to have some chips or some chocolate or a nice bubbly soda. But now I'm learning that, no, just because I'm at home, I can't be snacking 10 times a day. I'm also being far more intentional about physical activity and exercise and making sure I schedule it. I can't treat it as I can do it whenever, because when I say I'm going to do it whenever, then I never do it. I'm also, in this current job that I have, I'm on camera a lot more. One thing I like about it is it does force me to be somewhat presentable, at least waist up, every single day at work. I get to see people's faces when I'm talking with them and see their expressions. And not saying that's like all my social interactions for the day, but it does help. It does help to see people face to face. I'm also being much more intentional about getting outside of my house, going to planned activities, whether I plan them, whether it's someone else's activity, I don't really care. But making sure I still have hobbies and interests. I meet people in real life. I don't feel isolated and sheltered. When you work from home, sometimes it can feel like it's this never-ending day. Each day is the same, right? But what if you had a Toastmasters meeting you had to go to? What if you had a martial arts class, which I'm actually thinking about signing up for, that you had to get out of your house and you get to do something different with other people? Actually planning and being intentional about all these things that I'm doing outside of work and outside of my life. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, which I've also always told people is a great way where you don't have maybe coworkers physically, but you kind of feel like you have this virtual set of coworkers and people you can interact with socially. I'm also being very intentional about my phone use while I'm at work. One big contrast was when I worked on site, I worked in different areas that were called closed areas. No Bluetooth devices are allowed in those areas, which meant no phones. Some of those jobs, you don't even have internet access. I was pretty sheltered from all that. Now to have these jobs where I do have internet access all day long. I do have access to my phone all day long. Trying to spend less time on my phone, even though I have access to it. When I see emails that are important, I have a to be addressed later type of folder that I'll move those emails to, and I'll address them later on. Just being far more intentional about phone use, internet use, and all of that. The other reality that a lot of people don't realize about working from home is I don't have the type of job where I can run off to an internet cafe. I'm not running out to libraries or parks or working on a beach. I think that's a huge myth for a lot of people. A lot of people that are tech workers, we have to VPN to our computer. We have scenarios where you're trying to look at 2 or 3 different screens at the same time. It's not the most mobile setup. I don't also feel that comfortable working in a cafe or a coffee shop or a library. I might graduate to that one day, but when I'm at home, I'm generally at home. For any of you that work from home, what kind of tips and boundaries have you found that help make working from home really successful for you? I'd love for you to share those comments below. See you in the next video.